Fuck. Why, Madmind Studios? Why do you still torture me? Why are you still around? Why are you still around? And the first game, the thing that built your company, I was gonna say built your company, what you based your company on was Agony. It was the bedrock, the very first game you produced. And it failed. It failed so incredibly hard, it's not even funny. It took you 2 or 3 years longer than you said it was gonna take. Then you released it unfinished, and to people who kept asking you for it, and then no one liked it. It was so boring that it's incredible that you didn't perish just then. Not only didn't you perish, you are still making games. How the hell did you do that? It's actually kind of impressive, really. Despite what you had released upon the world, despite the damage you had caused yourself, your reputation, your business model, you're still here. Because not only are you still around, you're still making games. And first it was Paranoid, or Paranoia, or whatever it was called. And then you're making a sequel to Agony. Why? I mean, I know I said in one of my videos that I wanted to see a sequel to Agony, that I wanted to see a reboot of Agony, something, because I like the concept so much, but it's still kind of incredible how you actually managed to pull that off. And I have to be honest, I am not holding out much hope. I am not. I'm sorry. Agony left such a sour taste in my mouth, and I feel like I'm still allowed to complain, because I was one of those idiots who spent... God, I don't know. I can't actually remember what I spent, but I think it was something between the equivalent of 150 and 200 euros. That's what I put into the Kickstarter. And I still have the shirt somewhere. I have it. And here. Here. Look. 3 and 2 and 1. There. Seems apropos. But what exactly made Agony so bad? For those of you who don't want to go and rewatch my videos and hear my criticism of it. It's been a few months now, but I have realized now that really I'll give you this, half of the problem lay with me. Because my main issue was Agony was not the game I expected it to be. It was not a horror game. It was an exploration game with elements of horror. And that may confuse some people, but there is a difference between horror and horror. Horror can be an aesthetic, or it can be a spirit. And if horror is the spirit, then you're making a horror game. If horror is the theme, then you're making another kind of game, but there's a horror in... But the background of the game is horrific. For example, Tim Burton, he has a very horrific aesthetic, but you wouldn't call his movies horror movies. And same thing with the Doom games, and I will return to the Doom games in this video. They are not horror games, but they have a horror aesthetic. It's set in hell, for crying out loud, and that's the similarity between Agony and Doom, which a lot of fans actually pointed out, and I'm sure the developers were also aware of the similarity. Basically, you were walking around this area, and you were looking at horrific stuff. Occasionally you would have to hide from an enemy, and occasionally you would... And occasionally you would have to traipse around a trap. But at the end of the day, you were mostly just walking around this place, and that got so boring after a while. I didn't feel involved in what I was seeing at all, and I have to admit, despite the hype I got from seeing just the initial concept art and everything, it just wasn't that impressive. I'm sorry to say, it wasn't. It looked like any generic horror game set in hell. It looked like Doom with boobs. And I'm sorry, putting boobs and tatas... Putting boobs and vajayjays in your game and calling it groundbreaking or horrifying or disturbing, no. Just no. That's cheap. But what was the story of Agony? Because I honestly never understood that. I had to do a ton, and I do mean a ton of reading and internet sleuthing. Because even the Agony wiki still hasn't explained it all. Well, it's been more than a year. It's been, I don't think, 2 years, maybe even 3 since the release of Agony, and still the Agony wiki is not finished. None of the 7 endings are explained, and there are 7 endings. 7. What kind of idiot did you think was going to play this game 7 times over? The overall story is you play as the soul of Nimrod, the king of Babylon, or Babel, or Sumeria. I honestly can't remember. It's been a long time since I studied the Bible. But you're playing as Nimrod, anyway. And in the game version, Nimrod has become ambitious. He is planning to overthrow God himself because he thinks God is doing such a terrible job running the world. And he does this by building the Tower of Babel, but at the same time he also attracts the attention of the Red Goddess, Ishtar, as he knows her. And Ishtar convinces him to start sacrificing his people in her name. And I honestly don't see how you serve your people by killing your people. But he realizes this is all. But he realizes also because Ishtar, the Red Goddess, is an actual goddess, the actual contender to God. Winning her favor would actually help his quest to overthrow God, so that's what he does. And for this, he is of course sent to Hell. And your journey through Hell is to help Nimrod reach a point where he can either equal or surpass the Red Goddess. Yes, and there are 7 different endings, there are 7 different outcomes to that quest. Yes, but Succubus is pretty much assuming that you have reached one of 2 endings. And either you will have overthrown the Red Goddess and taken control over Hell, taking the Succubus as your bride, or you will have taken the Red Goddess as a bride. And either way, Succubus will take off. Either way, that's pretty much where Succubus starts off. You, Nimrod, is the king of Hell, and you, the Succubus this time, are his, well, wife. The Red Goddess is somewhere, doing something. In one of the endings, you do manage to escape Hell back to Earth, only you leave the door open, and that lets the Red Goddess come back and start, well, she kicks off the end times, basically, riding the beast towards the mountains of man. That's a Bioshock reference, never mind that. But anyway, the Red Goddess is gone, and the Succubus, she's your wife. She is bored with being married to you, because it's just a life of luxury in this depraved temple. You know that eternal question. Would you serve in heaven or rule in hell? Well, she's ruling in hell, and apparently she's not happy about it. And so she spends most of her time in the outskirts of hell, hunting and killing and doing everything that a demon of her stature would think of as fun. Only another demon, Baphomet, has become ambitious as well, and has somehow taken Nimrod's soul, or is planning to take Nimrod's soul, and he's basically arranging a rebellion. Actually, can you call Baphomet a he? Never mind. Upon this rebellion, you as the Succubus will travel through hell to try and retake your throne. And well, once I found out about it, Agony's plot seemed pretty... Agony's premise seemed pretty interesting as well, so I'm sorry, no, I'm not holding out great hopes for this, but Agony is pretty much what I started my YouTube channel on. It's what I've made the most videos about, I think. So, yeah, I may as well. I'll just get this over it. Let's see what we have here. I have no idea what to say about that. That was overwhelming. And I'm still trying to figure out whether it's in a bad or good way. I mean, from what I can see, not only has my original complaints with Agony not been addressed, they have been made worse. There's a very fine line between the fight or flight instinct that a lot of horror games, I feel, fail to address, because either it's too much flight or it's too much fight. If it's too much fight, then it's not scary, and then it becomes an action game with horror elements. And Agony sometimes approach that, because you could definitely do violent things and you could definitely fight things, but it didn't seem all that focused on it. And here, however, Succubus seems to go all out, making this a definite action horror game. It's got the battle gameplay of an action game, with the environment and design of a horror game. And you know what? I'm actually fine with that. That looks... I was gonna say amazing, that's the wrong word, but it looks really, really good. This I want to play. One of the main problems that I had with Agony is that it seemed so confused. At the end of the day, it was an exploration game, but it didn't seem able to decide whether it wanted to be horror, or exploration, or action. And the whole thing came off as just a mess that couldn't decide what it wanted to be. This has a definite identity. This is an action game with horrific imagery. If the rest of the game can replicate what we see in this trailer, then they do have a winner. They evidently have learned something from their experiences with Agony. So what do we see here? Well, we see this butt-naked woman wielding weapons, cutting the martyrs. I think it's the martyrs. And either the martyrs or the lost souls. I can't remember the terms. She's cutting people apart with the vagina dentata. She's cutting them apart with swords. She's cutting them apart with a scythe. And she's exploding them with pyrokinesis. And she's throwing them around with telekinesis. Definitely an action game going on here. More specifically, a hack and slash action game. A very visceral, up close and personal hack and slash game. This is a major difference from Agony right now. This feels like you're actually a part of the events, that you're not just watching something unfold, but you're in the moment. You're actually doing stuff. You're contributing to the horrors you're seeing, and it looks pretty good. And one of the issues that I have with first-person shooters, with first-person shooter hack and slash games, is that they put too much. It's the same issue with any first-person shooter, really, that you're pretty much floating around with your weapons up, and you have to do stuff, otherwise you're dead. But if you don't capture the true visceral moment, then it feels like one of the earlier first-person shooter games, like Counter-Strike or the early Doom or Quake. You know, you're just walking around, just pushing buttons and seeing the things unfold. Well, that's not exactly what's going on here. You have the walking animation, the character is affected by what's going on around it. It have to par, but at the same time, as soon as an action is over, then you revert to baseline, and then you might as well stand still, basically. And that's not the only similarity with Doom that we see here. I honestly don't know if there is a name for it. Let's call it the stop-motion animation. And you know, in Doom 4, the latest iteration of Doom, or second latest iteration, I know Doom Eternal is around the corner, but it isn't here yet, so I'll say the latest. Doom 4. That had a lot of very visceral moments. A lot of moments where you're up in the face of a demon and you're cutting them apart, and what happened? And there is one quick animation, then stop to see what's going on, then the animation continues, as in a stylized way. Hey, the same thing seems to be going on here, but it's sped up to the max. It happens in a millisecond, and I don't know how. If I want to cut something apart, which I do, I love doing that. And I would love to cut things apart as a demon. I think it would be visceral and cathartic and violent, and it'd be glorious, but I want to enjoy the moment. That's the difference between... Well, it's the basic difference between a gun and a knife. A gun... If you allow me to quote the Joker for a moment, and you know, Heath Ledger's Joker, a gun is too quick. You don't have time to savor all the little motions. But a better way of putting it is, a gun is clinical. It puts you away from the actual death. But a knife, that's personal, that's passionate, that's anger. You need to actually be in the moment, to actually feel it. Like I said, to feel the blade go into the flesh. That's the so-called appeal of the knife. In video games, at least. Yes, that's the appeal of getting up close and personal, and not just using a gun killing things from a distance. And it's supposed to be fun and bestial, and largely that's what's happening here. Basically what I'm saying is, I want to enjoy the moment where I cut something apart. I don't want it to be over in a millisecond. I want to actually see what I'm doing. I want to experience it, and I just think this is moving way too fast to be able to do that. It looks good, absolutely, and I haven't played it yet. Maybe if this is all you do throughout the game, maybe it becomes too repetitive after a while, but as it looks right now, it looks fun. And that's the main thing that was missing from Agony. It wasn't fun. This looks fun. On another note, the environment looks brilliant. And it looks like what I expected Agony to look like. There is 1,000 different details everywhere, and the entire environment, it feels chaotic and ergonomic. It doesn't feel stiff. It doesn't feel like it's a room full of boxes. And Agony didn't really do that either, but it was definite corridors, it was definite halls, it was definite arenas, so to speak. Heck, and this feels a lot more... It feels like I would expect a Hellscape to feel like. But with that said, there is a clear pattern going on here. You crawl from one area to the next, and by climbing up the walls, crawling through crevices, and basically you're moving along the environment in a way that only animals should be able to. In this very, I was gonna say ergonomic, that's the wrong word, but this very untraditional sense, if you will, for lack of a better word. I'm sorry, my knowledge of English is failing me right now. And then you emerge in a stage, and there are usually these big open expanses full of enemy. Yes, either they are full of enemies already, or they immediately start coming towards you as soon as you're down there. And that combines, like I said, that combines pretty much everything that I originally wanted from Agony. It combines the chaotic style, the chaotic environment of hell with the more arena-based approach that you usually see in first-person shooters of some kind. And it feels organic, it feels natural, it feels like something I could expect to see in hell. But actually, no buts. If they can keep that going throughout hell, and maybe switch it up now and again for different environments, for different places and so on, then I think we'll be golden. I think this could actually work really well on a gameplay level. And that's where largely Agony failed at. As I think, if this gameplay is good, and if they tweak the animations that's going on when fighting a little bit, then I think you will be golden. There's another thing that is actually worth pointing out as well. For Agony to succeed at all, Madmind Studios need to implement a way to turn off the nudity. The violence and gore, that's fair enough, that's open game, but considering YouTube's policies on the matter, and considering that a lot of successful Let's Players like Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, and... But yeah, if they want to have any kind of public spread and any kind of public acceptance of the game, you will need to be able to turn off the nudity, because otherwise Let's Players won't be able to put up Let's Plays on YouTube. And that's where I think you would get most of your exposure. Then again, you had this gameplay reveal on YouTube, breaking pretty much every single guideline YouTube had. So what do I know? Maybe a deal can be made so maybe a deal can be made so some major Let's Players can record themselves playing this game, and it'll be fine. But yeah, I think the option to turn off nudity, covering the succubus and the characters, somehow I think that needs to be put in, just out of necessity more than anything. And then there is another thing that I must ask. There is sex in this game. Why? I mean, I know that's one of the major criticisms against Agony, that it wasn't as bad as Madmind Studios first claimed when they first announced Agony. And that it wasn't as depraved, that it wasn't as carnal, that it wasn't as disgusting as we were first made. It didn't make us feel as uncomfortable as we first thought it was going to. So I definitely see why they would want to go as far as they can and just go all out. But here's the thing: sex and violence, yeah, they go hand in hand a lot of the time in political discussions. But as for an act itself, sex is something that appeals to every single one of us. Sexualized violence? Not really. So my problem here isn't the inclusion of sex itself. It seems that it's just that I'm not entirely clear of why we're having sex in the game. That's the thing, I don't understand that. I mean, maybe the act of sex is a bit like finding a treasure. Maybe we get some points that we can use in the skill tree or something like that. Maybe it can be something like that, but as far as it doesn't feel organic, you know. No, it doesn't feel like it's really a part of the game. It feels like it's there just to be there, just to be, just for Madmind Studios to go as far as they can. That feels like the reason it's there more than any practical reason. I mean, I get why I'm killing things in this game. They are trying to kill me. I get why I'm torturous about it, because I am a demon and this is hell. I get that. But all of a sudden, all the violence stops just so we can get down with this someone and then kill them because demon, I guess. Basically, I don't see the point. That is my main criticism of why sex in this game probably is a bad idea. At least if you can't incorporate it in such a way and that it makes sense within the world, other than Shisha Succubus have sex. That, I feel, is a failure on your part as a developer. I do not like that. However, that is just what it appears as in the gameplay. Maybe there is a valid reason for it in the game once you start playing, once you get into the world and start understanding it. But as it is, it just feels like it's included just to be included, and yeah, that's bad no matter what you're trying. That's bad no matter what game you're playing, I think. And the same thing can be said of violence at some points in this game, And the same thing can be said of violence in the game. And I know that's ridiculous. I know that sounds ridiculous. You're telling me in a violent game where you tear things apart, violence is unnecessary? That's not what I meant. I meant things like tearing the still unborn fetus out of a pregnant woman and then eating it. As far as I could tell, that didn't give us anything. Same thing with all the Onoscelius babies running around on the floor that we stomp over. Why are we doing that? Again, maybe we get points from that, but and it does feel more natural to include than sex in the game. It does feel like it's a part of the world, like something I could expect from a demon. And like, it would be something characters in this game would do. But again, as it is in the gameplay demonstration, I don't see the point. And that's that's a problem that was present in Agony as well. You could do a lot of stuff. You could be violent. You could tear things apart. But at the end of the day, there was absolutely no reason to do so other than you could do that. There was no reward for it. There was no penalty if you didn't do it. There was nothing like that. I mean, it did affect the outcome a little bit, but as a whole, there was largely no reason for doing anything other than exploring in Agony. Yeah, so if you still haven't learned that lesson from Agony, I am still suspicious. I will enter this game with an open mind, but I am still suspicious of that. If something doesn't feel necessary and it doesn't feel fun, and honestly, while I am a fan of edgy things, I like things that are a bit darker than what people generally are comfortable with. But in a game where you're supposed to advance and get a sense of achievement by doing stuff, if something is unnecessary and it isn't fun, yeah, that's a bad thing, because that means the game itself isn't fun, or at least that specific aspect of the game isn't fun. My overall assessment of Succubus is this. It looks like a major improvement over Agony, but it doesn't look all that special. I mean, the aesthetics are beautiful, the designs are incredible, but from a sheer gameplay standpoint, I've seen all of this before. I have seen ultra-violence, I have seen sadism, I have seen blades cutting people apart, I have seen horrible traps, I have seen environments that are dangerous and needs to be navigated with care, and I have seen this. That's the thing. It looks really good. It looks fun. At this point, it looks fun. But it's still not the game changer that we are supposed to get with Agony. Still, all in all, I think I should just let go of what I wanted Agony to be. The Honor Scalis isn't the Red Goddess. The overall game isn't a horror game that will leave you disturbed. It's just a game that didn't measure up to the hype around it. If this is what we can expect from Succubus, then we are in very good hands. I think we have something real to look forward to here, but no, there is no but, actually. This looks like a solid game if they can deliver on what we see in this gameplay. If they can make the whole game as fun as what we are seeing in this small bit of gameplay, then yeah, I am looking forward to... Then yeah, I'm looking forward to Succubus, and I hope to see that Madmind Studios can claw themselves out of the hole they dug themselves in with Agony, and I wish them all the best.